Jeff Carlson takes control of the Apple Watch, Part 1. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by Incogni. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Get 60% off an annual plan at incogni.com/Chuck and use the code Chuck at checkout. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's that time of year when we upgrade our hardware. We look at other options for things that we might upgrade. We might even upgrade the hardware of some people we care about. One of those items is most likely the Apple Watch, which makes it the perfect time for me to talk to Jeff Carlson about his take control of Apple Watch, the new 6th edition. Jeff, it's great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, once again, thank you for having me on.
It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. You know, I may be a little bit selfish because I've got some people that I was seriously looking at upgrading their Apple Watches. They have some older Apple Watches, and so you're looking at the deals we're seeing on the 10. Of course, the 11 is the current flagship model, and we have watchOS 26. So I feel like there's a lot here for you to tell us about.
Yeah, there is. Well, it's kind of an interesting year because you mentioned that the Series 10, which you can still buy refurbished, and I think from like third-party vendors, it is very, very close to the Series 11. So the brand new Apple Watch really doesn't have a whole lot that's different about it, like hardware-wise. For that, it's mostly, if you have an older, say, Series 5, Series 6, that level where your watch, like, it still works, but it's probably feeling a little bit more pokey, or maybe you can't get watchOS 26 on it. I can't remember exactly where the cutoff is. I want to say it's probably the 6. Then that's when you start looking for a brand new watch. And I think if you are going for longevity, like a Series 11 is good. If you have a Series 10 now, it doesn't make much sense to upgrade to an 11. But, I think a lot of us kind of fall into that cycle of, this thing on my wrist is working really well, and it's doing pretty much everything that I want it to. I don't need to make this a yearly thing. And so you skip a few generations, and then when you do upgrade, you see that, all right, everything has a much faster processor, and I can take advantage of new features like hypertension alerts and some of the things that work now from, I think, the Series 9 and later. And then it becomes like, it feels like you're getting a brand new thing rather than, oh, this is just an increment of the old one. So, I would say in terms of the series watches, that's not a really big jump. In terms of the Ultra, so actually, I'm going to go against my own advice here. I bought the Series 10 last year. And so normally, if I took my own advice, I would be fine. But last year, what I really wanted to buy was the Apple Watch Ultra. But it still had like the original processor. I think the only thing they changed about the Ultra 2 last year was to make it gray or dark silver or whatever I can't remember which color they're calling it this year, space gray maybe. And so this year it's been upgraded. So the Ultra 3 has the same processor as the 11. It's got like better battery life. And so I did end up actually getting the Ultra. And partially that's because I've not had one before. I wanted the longer battery life. And I think just to kind of have something different, because even though I like the design of the series, it's been the same. It's essentially the same since the beginning. So in terms of hardware, like a 10, 11, or an Ultra 3 is a really good choice. And then Apple kind of snuck in the SE3, which for people who are, very casual users, or maybe you want to get one for a family member who doesn't care about most of the things that we might talk about today. It's inexpensive, and like that's the nice low budget alternative. Except this year, the SE3, it's still the nice low budget alternative, but it does more than the other ones. The other ones were very much an old model with a new sticker on it. And this is a current model with fewer features and a lower price. And so it has like an always on screen, which the old ones did not. And at least, in terms of like a day-to-day experience, I remember when I want to say it was the Series 5 that had the always on screen. And up until then, you would just raise the watch to wake it up, and that's when you would see it, and then the screen would turn off because it would conserve the battery power, and that was fine. And I remember thinking, like, I don't need an always on screen because that's just kind of it's a little luxury. And of course now I'm like, I will always have my always on screen. I mean, I could turn it off if I wanted to. Like if I really wanted to extend my battery life, I could make it so that it only shows up when I raise my wrist. But I like being able to see what time it is. I like that when it's in its like low power mode, not low power mode with capital letters, but when the screen is basically asleep, it refreshes fast enough now that you still see the time, and you see like the seconds ticking, and it's not just like you're looking at a little snapshot of the last minute. It's active. So like all those little things, what's a good way to put it? Like all those little things, if you're coming from one very recently, probably won't sway you. But especially if the people that that you want to get watches for, you want to encourage them to get watches, or I'm sure a lot of people watching this right now are like, I have people who are asking me, should I upgrade? Should I do this? This year seems to be good in terms of those folks who haven't really had anything more recent. That was a mouthful. Sorry. I just sort of unloaded everything on you there.
Well, no, I think because honestly, I tend to forget about the Ultra because I feel like the Ultra is not for me. The only reason I ever considered an Ultra at one point is because it had in fact, I think it regained the title of having the maximum amount of screen real estate by a few pixels. So other than that, it's like, it's a little bit heavier, and I could live with it, but I really don't need it. So right now I've still got a 10 on my wrist. I looked at the 11 and thought, yeah, there may be a couple small features, but I'm not sure that I'm really that hard on my watch as far as needing it. But I also have some people that are, they're back in watch 4 and 5 and 6 and maybe a 7. And so, that's when, sort of like an old iPad, it's probably time to think seriously about upgrading for both the experience and the feature set.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I used the always on screen as an example, but I remember like when they first introduced like the fall detection, like that was something that I think made a lot of people suddenly think, oh, like perhaps my elderly parents should have one of these, just because of the safety feature of it. And I think some of the things now in the more recent models, with Apple leaning more into the health side of things and being able to really go beyond not just tracking you when you're active or when you're exercising, but like the sleep stuff is starting to get a little bit more advanced. One of the features that I look at every morning, there's a sleep score, and it will tell you how well you slept. Now, it's not like super comprehensive. It will basically give you a score based on what time you went to bed, how much sleep you got, and how many times you woke up. But so far, like really correlates where if I wake up and I'm feeling kind of ragged and I look down and see that, I must have woken up 8 or 9, 10 times during the night. Not necessarily like I didn't get up, but like I was just restless, or however it determines like a wake up to be. And that kind of tells me, all right, well, maybe I should make a point of going to bed earlier tonight. So like these little things that add up. I mentioned the hypertension alerts. So far, it's nothing that I've gotten, which I'm very happy to say. But for some people who may not have known that they might be at risk of high blood pressure, that can be a good first signal that says, hey, not necessarily that you have hypertension, but there's something that suggests it, and you should ask your doctor about it. And, I'm sure Apple will probably come out with a video the next time they have like a big announcement of people who are like, yeah, I thought I was fine, and I got this alert, and I went to my doctor, and my doctor was like, oh, you know what? You would benefit from, extra exercise or being put on some medication or whatever. It's the type of thing where we got these watches and we're thinking about, all right, here's a cool way to tell time, and I can have notifications, and when I get a phone call, I can hang up. If it's a spam call, I can just disconnect it from my wrist, and it's super convenient. And there are a lot of things that it's doing in the background that turn out to be helpful in other different ways. And I think it's just sort of interesting that this is now more of a companion. Like, it's not super active companion, but it's there. And if you want to dig into the data, you really can. If you don't, I think I would have a more casual relationship to my watch in terms of, letting it dictate what I do and what I eat and all of that. But it's a helpful thing. So I don't know what my overall point there was. It's just that it's there's so much going on. And again, we come to this point. This is partially why we have a book about it. I am sort of astounded to announce that my book is something like 313 pages. I mentioned that to my wife, and she was like, how can you have 300 pages about a watch? And I basically said the same thing, but the answer is, like, there are a lot of little things that it does. And even though there might be a bunch of things that you have no interest, like maybe you are not going to create new calendar events on your watch, it's something that it can do. And that's something that maybe there's 5 other things that you realize would be helpful.
I want to point out, and I've mentioned this on the show before, but every time I go in to see my doctor, my doctor kind of looks at my wrist and says, oh, okay, good. That he recommends the Apple Watch to everyone because of the hypertension, because of all of the health features and those aspects to it. And and he has no idea that, like, I'm an Apple crazy. And so, he's completely just doing it from the medical standpoint. And that really impressed me because, depending on, with no intended insults, some GPs just are not into the technology. And,
Totally.
the fact that some are, really, I think, speaks very highly, because we've talked plenty of times about the people that have been warned about AFib, and, they end up going to a hospital, finding out. And does it save their lives? Who knows? There's some people I think it has, but it just feels like one of those things that, if it's available to you and you have any chance of affording it, then by all means put one on your wrist. It's cheaper than an ER visit, I'll tell you that. Welcome to the future of data privacy with Incogni. In today's tech-driven world, protecting your personal information from data brokers is more crucial than ever. Incogni is here to ensure your data remains private and secure. This service is designed to help protect your personal data from data brokers who collect, aggregate, and sell it. It hunts down those unethical sites and gets your info removed from the places that expose your private information. Incogni is also so thorough, they go after all kinds of data brokers, marketing firms, credit companies, people search sites, recruitment data brokers, any sort of medical or police information, you name it. If they've got your info, Incogni is coming for it. You're covered in all areas. Incogni has also launched a new feature called Custom Data Removals, available in their unlimited plan. It allows you to send any link from any site that exposes your data. And then Incogni's privacy professionals will go after it. No bots, no forums, just real people making your data disappear. Total legends. This is especially useful for removing records from places like legal databases or people's search engines that don't play nice with traditional opt-outs. Right now, you can get 60% off an annual plan by going to incogni.com and use the code CHUCK. That's incogni.com/Chuck and use the code CHUCK at checkout. Right now, you can get 60% off their annual plans by heading to incogni.com/Chuck and using the code CHUCK at checkout. It's also completely risk-free. Incogni offers a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied with them removing your personal information off the internet. Live free from dangerous spam by using Incogni. Again, that's incogni.com/Chuck for 60% off their annual plans with the code CHUCK. Thanks to Incogni for supporting MacVoices.
You bringing up your doctor is a great example. I just recently had to switch doctors because I got new insurance. And so when I met with her, we're just going over like all the sort of general things and stuff that was in my record and all that. And like, I can't remember what specific aspect of it was, but she was like, well, what about this? And I was like, oh, well, actually, I can show you what the results were. I think it may have been blood pressure or sleep related. I can't remember, but I was able to like open my health app and say, oh, like I haven't been really consistent about it, but this is the data that it shows. And obviously this is not going to be definitive data. And especially, for something like AFib, the watch is basically like a one lead test, and a real heart doctor will want, I think they do like a 5 lead test, which just gives them, like a clearer picture. But the point of this was like, I had some data, and I think she wasn't as familiar with having patients who had this sort of data being collected, much less like literally, oh, I can show you that right now, and you can see what the last 6 months looks like. And like that just sort of gives you a leg up, because it may not be comprehensive data, but it is data. And especially like a lot of the data doesn't mean that much to me, but there's probably something there that even a regular GP doctor can look at and say, oh, you know what, this looks like maybe that could be a possibility. Let's do another test. Or this, this seems completely fine. We'll revisit in a year when we see each other again, that sort of thing. And again, This is just coming from a watch. So it like not even getting to the point of going to the emergency room. It's just, okay, well, maybe I don't need to schedule another round of tests, or maybe I don't need to come into the office for a follow-up thing, because that question was answered, in one fell swoop, right? So it's funny. We start talking about this every time, and then I feel like I'm just like evangelist for Apple Watch health things, and this is going to improve your life and it's going to change everything. And like, there's some of that because I've, written a book about it and I know a lot about it. But like, I know how I sound. It sounds kind of ridiculous, but on a very practical level, and also like realizing that this is something that millions and millions of people have. And so that just makes it so that even in a small way, if that is helping out a small percentage of millions of people, that's still a lot of people. And it's kind of remarkable to me, we're now, I think, 11 years into the Apple Watch, probably generally 15 when you look at like other smartwatches like Garmin's and Fitbits and like some of those that were just started early enough just for basic like motion tracking and foot tracking, step tracking. You know, this is a thing that changes a lot of people's lives, and it kind of sounds like science fiction, but it's not. It's just this thing where you can go and spend I want to say like the least expensive what is like $250 I think for the SE3. You could probably get it even cheaper. Holiday sales are coming up. Refurbished units are out there. Like that is a small price to pay compared to most, doctor visits without insurance or emergency room visits, or, even just honestly, and this is where I'm going to go over the top and how great all this is, but like peace of mind. Like you don't have to think about, am I at risk for falling? There's a thing in the health app that will tell you, like it just sort of records your cadence and your step, and it gives you like a percentage of how unstable you might be. And I'm happy to say that I appear to be relatively stable. We're not talking mentally, but we're talking physically. And, but like, that's a thing where maybe, I'm injured, or maybe there's, I don't know, like I'm getting older. So I have hips and things that are not as spry as they used to be. And this could tell me like, oh, you know what? Like you have a 2% more risk of maybe not being as stable on your feet. So maybe you should either get that checked out, or maybe it's time to stop. I don't know. I can't think of a good activity because I don't do enough activities, but something that would affect that. Right. So, and do people know that that's there? Probably not. Will it like pop up a thing? I don't even know. But if you start digging into the data in the health app, you can find all sorts of interesting things.
Whenever we have a discussion about the Apple Watch, I mean, we have to go down the health rabbit hole because I think it's one of the most important parts of an Apple Watch. I mean, otherwise you go out and get a Timex and, and strap it on your wrist. But what the Apple Watch gives you just from a health perspective, let alone all of the other options, it's just, it's well worth the money. But so let's pull back from the health part a little bit and talk more about some of the new capabilities that I guess we're primarily talking about watchOS 26. Although if there's something that the 11 has brought to the table, please, by all means, do so. Because I think you're absolutely right. There are all these things you can do with the watch, and none of them are going to probably change your life other than the health part. But again, we're done with that. But they're super convenient, and it's like, once I know I can do it, then it becomes part of my tool set. And my biggest trick is just remembering that I can do it.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I mean, one of the things that I love about the Apple Watch, and again, I'm evangelizing again, but I think this is kind of one of the key things that maybe goes unnoticed, is the fact that the Apple Watch, it's not like the phone in that the phone can do dramatic things for you. Like if you buy an iPhone 17 Pro, you will get a better camera and you will take better pictures than say, an iPhone 13 or 14, something slightly older. It will get better battery life. It'll have a better screen. Like those are sort of big noticeable things that you notice when you're using it. With an Apple Watch, it's all a bunch of small things that add up to like smooth your day, right? So for example, honestly, one of my favorite new features is one that I thought was just kind of, minimal. It's kind of cute, but has really changed the way I use my watch. And that is wrist flick. And what that means is, and this also applies to the Series 9 and later. So I want to say with the Series 9, it introduced the double tap gesture. So when you pinch two fingers together, it can select like whatever sort of button is on the screen. Or if you're looking at, say, the Smart Stack, it'll advance the Smart Stack. And what wrist flick does, it's like even easier. You just turn your wrist like 45 degrees away from you, in a flicking like short gesture. And the idea is that just sort of gets rid of whatever is on the screen. So for example, you get a notification, you're in the middle of cooking, and like you don't have a hand to like tap and say dismiss this notification. But if you do a little wrist flick, it just gets rid of it, right? Super like small and easy gesture. But what you can also do is if you are in any other app, or even like, let's say the Smart Stack is showing, or the notifications or whatever, anything, you just do a wrist flick and it takes you back to your watch face. Now, is that a massive technological improvement? It's kind of a one-trick pony, but I use it all the time because I'll have something come up, or I'll start playing music and the Smart Stack is set up so that it will put a little widget that shows me like what song is playing, because the idea is it's going to be helpful and maybe you want access to that control. Well, I don't necessarily want to see that. I want to see my watch face that has the time and the weather, and maybe like I have a little complication that when I set a timer, it'll count down like what's left on the timer. And all I have to do is just flick my wrist and get back to that watch face. It's crazy how this one little thing has gotten me excited about a feature, because it's genuinely useful, it's low friction, and it's something that I find myself using like 3, 4, 5 times a day. I had no idea that would be the case, but it totally is.
Well, and it sounds like, Jeff, we started out this by you saying, you can create a calendar notification on your watch. And that's something that, maybe people want to do, maybe they don't want to do. But almost certainly they want to do some easy navigation through the watch interface. And especially, like you said, if you don't have a hand free, then it makes perfect sense. So these are the little things that I feel like sort of make the Apple Watch not exactly magic, but just, really useful. The trick is, though, that because nothing else does it, you have to be told about them, or you have to learn them.
Yeah. Like you have to know that it will do this. And that's what we're here for, apparently. Right now.
Exactly.
There's a book that you can access. The problem is, let me just finish this one thought. The problem is that now I want more. Like, I like being able to do the wrist flick to get rid of something, but now there are a lot of times when I really want to see my notifications, but there's no way to bring that up. Like I would like to do a wrist flick the opposite direction if it would understand that, to bring down my recent notifications. So it's like they've teased us with this super simple, convenient thing, and now I want more super simple, convenient things. So I'm getting a little bit greedy, because I'm like, oh, well, you know what? I know I got like 3 notifications while I was doing this last thing in the kitchen. Oh, but I still need to like free up my hand and swipe down from the top and do all of that. So
somewhere in my head, I'm equating this to all the swipe gestures that we had to learn with the iPhone. The single click, double click on the mouse. If you have a trackpad, the 1 finger swipe, 2 finger swipe, 3 finger swipe, 4 finger swipe. There's so many things that, it can kind of boggle your mind what's already there. And all of those OSs are a lot longer in the tooth than the watchOS. So you may be greedy, but I also think it's just earlier days, not early days, but earlier days,
Yeah.
and that some of this will develop as we give feedback to Apple, as Apple gets its own feedback and does its own research about what people want or how they can help people do what they want to do with their watch.
Yeah, totally.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.